This is Crystal, aka Sauce.
And this is Tanya, aka Season. Welcome to Sauce and Season, a podcast dedicated to real people to provide real talk and real healing on various topics. We are both wives, moms, entrepreneurs, and business professionals. Our hope is that through these topics and experiences we share, we can gain new insight for ourselves and provide new insights for others. We are excited that you decided to join us as we take this wild roller coaster ride that we call life together, and hope that you stick around.
Hello, everyone. This is Crystal, aka Sauce.
And this is Tanya, aka Season.
All right, so welcome back, everyone, to another podcast segment with Sauce and Season. So we are talking about the topic of settling today.
Yep.
So I have, as a therapist, I have definitely had an increase in a lot of female clients, mainly older clients, past teenage years, in their adult years, that have come to me about various things, particularly about I'm realizing self-worth.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of the women clients that I have right now is a lot of the issues that they have come back to settling and compromising in relationships where they know they no longer want that relationship or know for a fact that this person is no longer the best person for them. Right. Yet because of a concern of being alone or feeling like they've wasted time or wanting it to work so badly, they settle and they compromise in the situation, not even realizing that that's also still contributing to their depression, their anxiety, their stress, and their lack of self-worth. So I want to just kind of talk about that a little bit more, about why as women do we settle, where does the settling come from, and how does it really impact us when we do settle and we do compromise. So, Mom, I want to ask you, have you ever settled in a relationship or, felt like you had to compromise in a relationship to pick and continue choosing that same person?
So I'm going to talk about the fact that it's not just romantic relationships, but I have settled in friendship relationships where I've seen that I've been loyal to people, I've been kind to people, and those same people don't give me the same energy. Matter of fact, right now I'm in a season of my life where I'm reevaluating my friendships, my group of people that are around me, and trying to figure out, are those relationships healthy? I used to put myself out a lot more. I'm making sure I call you, making sure I text you, making sure that I'm around you. And I realized everybody didn't do the same for me. I'm a big supporter. I support my friend group, right? So if you have a new business, I'm right there. I'm buying. I'm talking about it and things like that. And I have noticed in the past few years that people don't do the same for me, right? And so I've had a couple of people say, well, you shouldn't look at that because if you're doing it for the kindness of your heart. That's true. But like you said earlier, when it comes to certain things, you start to have more anxiety. You start to realize that you're starting to feel pressured for things that you're causing yourself to be pressured for. So I don't have to support at that same level to say I'm your friend, right? Because that you're sure showing that to me. So yes, I have found myself settling for friend groups. Now, in romantic relationships when I was younger, being of my age now, I've been with your dad for so long, no, I didn't find myself now. There were things within my relationship that I found myself settling for. And so your father and I had to have conversations because he felt the same way. And so we had to have conversations about what did we feel needed to improve in the partner or even in ourselves to make the relationship work better. So yes, those are definitely areas we have to look into as women. And I will say even as men.
As men too. Yeah, I think it's in general. I just noticed that for my current population,
right,
it's mainly a woman thing right now.
Yeah,
but of course, if we look at it as a broad spectrum, we don't find out that it's anybody.
Right.
And so you bring up a great point because you talk about relationships, and we talked about before, I think in previous podcasts, that a relationship is just inclusive of two people or more. So of course that includes intimate relationships, like you said. You brought another avenue with friendship. So I want to kind of, how about we dissect this from the two lenses. So let's look at from the first point, which is relationship standpoint of intimate relationship. So that means with a partner versus the relationship with a friend. So as you said, with you and Dad particularly, there were times that you compromised. Now, and I can speak for myself and say, I don't think I've ever settled in a relationship. I do think I've learned to compromise on certain things within the relationship. And I want to make this very clear. In any relationship, you have to compromise.
That's right.
So do not get compromising different with settling, because they are different. When we talk about compromising, that's in any relationship in general. There's things that you're going to have to compromise on. That's a give and take. That's
correct.
You saying what you have challenges with. I'm saying what I have challenges with. I'm saying what I want. You're saying what you want. You're saying what you need. I'm saying what I need. And then we understand that in a relationship, we're not going to get everything we want and need.
Correct.
And so therefore, some of the things is going to get lost on the wayside. But what can we compromise on and say that this works best for us? What can we share and say that this is okay for us? Right. And so there's been times where I've had to compromise in certain things in a relationship. And I will say in a previous relationship where I realized that I was starting to settle with my own happiness, or I was starting to be depressed about certain things or constantly wanting things to change, and I did not see that change happening, but I still stayed in it. In that moment, I will say I settled because I was at a stage where I realized this is not helping me. It's now hurting me. This is not allowing me to grow. This is not taking me to my next level. We are not on the same path. We are not even in the same vicinity. We are not headed in the same direction. Our goals of what we want is different. And so if I knew all of that, there was a moment where I was still in it, and that was me settling. Correct. Because
that's the difference.
I've been spending time in this relationship. Correct. I've already given up years. I've already gotten to a place where I'm vulnerable. I've already gotten to a place where you understand me or you know about me. And so I don't want to lose all that. I don't want to, the major term I hear, start over. So I'll rather stick in this of what I got. And the reason why that's so problematic is because basically I'm saying I'm going to settle my own happiness. I'm going to settle on what I know I deserve. I'm going to settle on what I really want. I'm going to settle for that person who may be that person for me. I'm going to settle on getting everything that my heart desires because I'm afraid to move forward.
And that's the difference between compromise and settling. Compromise is when we get into a room together and two people get together or more and talk about changes. And whereas settling is, I'm just going to stick with these feelings and I'm going to go through the motions and I'm going to just live it out, as opposed to speaking about it. So I can be unhappy. You know, back in a long time ago, years ago, before I was even born, I had a conversation with an older woman later in years who was older than me. And she talked about the fact that you stay in a marriage no matter if your husband's cheating, no matter if he's abusing you, or these different things, and you don't let anyone know about it, right? Now, this woman was a beautiful church-going woman. I loved her. I loved her relationship with the Lord. But she wasn't just in a relationship. She was in an abusive relationship. But it was, I'm going to live through it. You know why? Because I may not find anyone else who's going to help me pay my bills and take care of my kids. So I might as well stay with their father and allow this situation to continue. That's settling. That is a problem for me. That is an issue. Biblically, yes, the Bible, you know, God didn't set out for us to be divorced and things like that. But at the same point in time, you have to evaluate what's going on in a relationship. And that's when you do involve God and you get to talking and say, okay, Lord, now I'm not understanding this. You know, this is the situation at this moment. So people do settle because, like you said, they get comfortable. They get comfortable. I watched my mom comfortable. And she wasn't even married. But I watched her in an abusive situation and she was comfortable because she was scared to leave. I don't have anyone else to take care of us. So I'm going to stay in this. And so then it became detrimental. She was settling, but it became detrimental to me as a child because I saw this. And so some of that did rub off where there were times where I feel like I'm supposed to settle for a situation, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's a job, whether you just go through it. You're strong. You can do this, you know, so we have to be very careful.
And, you know, you mentioned two major parts that I want to kind of touch on. One, in regards to like how you as a child seeing that impacted you. What we don't realize as women, people in general, but definitely I want to talk to women, is that as a woman, when you're settling, it impacts you in so many ways.
It does.
It impacts you because the more, even though you have your reasoning, whatever that reasoning may be of, I don't want to move forward, I don't want to start over, I don't want, this person is financially taking care of me, which is most of the time where I realize for a lot of clients that I have, it comes back to not wanting to start over and they're not in a situation where they can take care of themselves in some aspect, whether that's safety, security, or financially. And so they'll rather stay in it because of the fact that they're able to get that aspect from that person that they're with, that spouse.
Right.
And so when we are in this standpoint of settling, it impacts your self-worth, because in one end you think it's saving you because, yeah, I don't have the money to leave, so I'm just going to stick into it. But now I'm depressed, or now I'm anxious, or now I'm suicidal, or now it's like I have no reason to live. With regards to like how I'm looking is very not up to par. My daily living skills is not where it needs to be. I'm letting myself go. I'm overeating. All these different aspects. So yeah, we're trying to save ourselves from this one piece of not starting over, but now we're affected in so many different ways. And then if we add on the extra notch of, oh, you have kids. I can't tell you how many times I've heard women say, well, I'm going to stay in it for the kids. Why? Because what you don't realize is in your mind, for whatever reason, it makes sense. But the reason why I'm going to tell you it makes absolutely no sense is because kids are very great at picking up emotional state. And kids are very decisive in discernment. They have discernment when it comes to their environment.
Correct.
And so what you do is, in your mind, I'm going to stay in this toxic, unhealthy situation for my kids, yet my kids know I'm not happy. Yet now my kids are picking up depression. And now I wonder why my kids is walking around depressed, or my kids are walking around with anxiety, or my kids are struggling in school, or my kids are talking about suicidal and being suicidal and all these different things. Because yes, you think you're saving them from something, but they are picking up on their environment. They are also probably seeing things that you don't even realize they're seeing it. One of the biggest things I used to learn as a kid is I could learn so much when I was quiet. When I was quiet and my parents and people didn't know I was around, I'm picking up everything. I'm able to hear things because they don't even realize up there I'm invisible. And I promise you, your kids are probably doing the same thing. So now you're thinking they don't know what's going on, but they're seeing your actions. They're seeing how y'all talk to each other. They're seeing the body language. They're hearing things. God forbid, family is sharing things around them. All these different reasons. So you have this aspect of saying, I'm staying for my kids, but now your kids are also taking the brunt of it. Now your kids are learning about staying in an unhealthy relationship. Now your kids are learning what toxic means and seeing how, because mom didn't leave, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm not supposed to leave.
And those things become curses, because I think about myself and how watching those type of relationships and things my mom did affected me, so that when I did become part of a committed relationship, if your father to me felt like he wasn't on the same page with me, I was scared to mention it at the beginning. There was nothing that he did, but it was a learned behavior, because my mom was always scared of my dad. Like, I couldn't go outside. If I went outside, my mother was abused. She was hit because I'm not supposed to be outside playing with my friends. So she would give me about 2.5 minutes. And back in the day, you don't have cell phones. So she couldn't get a phone call and say, hey, I'm up the street or I'm around the corner. It was just a pop-up, right? And so the minute my dad would pop up, if I'm outside, we got to go inside, because he got to deal with that in his mind, because she let me be outside. But it made me afraid to talk up in my own committed relationship and relationships with friends. Because right away, I'm thinking you're going to get mad at me if I speak about my opinion, or if I even have an opinion, or if I even make a decision. And that was something that I had to overcome in the early stages of my relationship. And I find myself even doing it now. Even now I have to remind myself, you're not in that situation, that you're not living that toxic life anymore. But that was something that was a learned behavior for me. You can't talk up. You got to go through it. You got to sit with it. You got to be strong. You can't speak about your opinions. You can't have feelings. You can't have emotions. So there was so many different things going on with me from learning that. So I agree with you. We have to be careful what we portray, because those toxic ideals end up being a part of our daily living and the lives of others.
Correct. Especially your kids, if they're directly related to you. And even as you kind of share, what I was going to say about the second point that you mentioned was in regards to how the church was and people, older generations. And I want to speak on that, because that's actually where I was going to be going to, is that I think a lot of things in our community right now is very much learned. And I've heard it recently where people have said, well, marriages back in the day lasted longer than marriages now. Why? That doesn't mean it was a positive thing, because a lot of the marriages that lasted back in the day is because these women got together with these men when they were young. These women were with these men because they could financially help take care of them. These women were with this man because they were trained to not leave. Divorce was a no-no. And I'm not pushing divorce. I'm not saying that run out and get divorced because, I do couples therapy and I'm a big believer in marriage, and I'm a big believer that if you can make it work, make it work. If you can repair it, repair it. If you've done all you can do in that relationship, if you have not done all that you can do in that relationship, then make sure you can say that you have before going your separate ways. So it's not to push divorce, but there are a lot of older generation couples that just should have been divorced. I'm going to say it. They should have just been divorced.
Should not have been together.
They shouldn't have been together in the first place, but since they were, they should have just got divorced because it was so much domestic violence, so much physical abuse, so much infidelity. Right. So many things was going on that just because, yes, marriages back in the days lasted longer, it wasn't out of, I'm going to say it wasn't even out of choice because it was also a very big biblical standpoint for why a lot of those couples did a divorce, especially from the woman's side of view. Is like, divorce was a bad word, and that means you failed. And I think a lot of people look at it as failure, as like, well, if I get divorced, that means I failed in some way and I did something wrong. And a lot of marriages lasted long because they didn't want to look like a failure. So they rather stay in that toxic relationship. And if you really look at it, the reason why we can say now, oh, they're not lasting as long is because remember what was happening during that time is they birthed kids. So it goes back to our original point of you have this older couple that's together. They stay married through, let's say, domestic violence, through physical abuse with each other, through cheating. And your kids are aware. And so now these kids are growing up, right? I always tell my mom that I believe when things happen and kids see things, they either do one or two things. Either they become that very thing that they don't like, or they do the opposite of that thing because they never want to be a part of it. So let's use domestic violence to be an example. If I saw my dad beating on my mom as a son, either I'm going to try my hardest to never be like my dad, so I'm going to make sure I never put my hands on a woman. Right. Or because of how I've been around, I see it, I actually become that same thing. So then I now grow up and I am now an abusive person as well. Mm-hmm. And so as your kids are growing up from that older couple who stayed married, because marriage was such an important thing because it was a term and it was something that was looked at as you're married. These particular couple had kids who saw behind closed doors the cheating, who saw behind closed doors the abuse, who saw behind the closed door the emotional abuse. And so now they grow up. Yeah. And either they become that same thing or they say, oh, I don't want that. So they may stay away from marriage. Right. They may not even want to get married, or they may run when they see a guy that has red flags, or they, these different things. And so that's why a lot of marriages aren't where they need to be nowadays, because these are kids that came and were birthed from that unhealthy marriage that wasn't really a good thing. As much as you try to think it is.
You're, I know our topic today is more about settling. But, that topic of marriage, one day we really have to expose that one and talk about it and teach it well, because I realize it hasn't been taught as it should have been taught, because marriage is relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's one of the things that leads to that settling thing is nobody understands how to do relationship right. We don't understand relationship, whether it's in marriage, friendship, romantic relationship, whatever it is, we don't understand relationship, right? We don't understand how to do relationship, right? Because we have toxic ideas of what a relationship is, what a friendship is, what communication is, what conversation is. There's so much in there. This is a meaty topic. It is. Because settling, last night it was just really funny. Your brother came to me and he talked to me and said, Mom, hey, what was it as a kid that you never got to do that you would like to do now as an adult? Which I thought was wild, because I could go back when you first brought up this topic about settling. Right away, I thought about the fact that I settled to not do certain things because I believed either I was too heavy or I didn't have time. So I settled rather than jumping to do it. And I looked at him and I said, I've been thinking about roller skating again, because that used to be something I really loved to do. And he said, okay, so let's do it. He didn't ask, how we going to do it, when we going to do it even. It was just, let's do it now, right? Because let's live. And I think that's the most important thing. I think we were talking earlier, and one of the things I was saying was, people have to realize that life carries on without you. Time is going to move on without you. I was telling you about even rest, when it comes to rest, right? Settling to not have rest so that I could start a business. And I hear people say this all the time. I'll rest when I'm dead. That ain't rest. It is rest spiritually, but you can't enjoy that rest. So why not rest now, right? Because God has given you an opportunity for you to use this time for an important moment. And rest is a part of that, because even Jesus rested, right? So it's just so much in this topic that we could just, oh my God, I could probably spend all day talking about this.
Yeah,
but settling is something I learned not to do anymore.
It goes into so many different topics. Correct. And I think even as we talk about, settling within relationships, this is still meatier because, we're not even going to get into the ins and outs of how not to do and all those lovely things that goes with it. But I think a lot of women settle out of this obligation as well to that person that they're with. And it's like, why are you obligated to stay with them if they're not providing you anything that you need? If anything, why? I recently told a client, I'm saying it this way. I recently told a client, we take care of everybody, right? Especially as women. And I'm going to speak from a standpoint as a Black woman. As a Black woman, we are taught to be superwoman. We are taught to take care of the husband, take care of the children, take care of the household. Now in our community, we still got to go ahead and go to work, because it's not like back in the days where only the husband worked. You got to go out there, get that money, and come back in, clean the house, cook the food, and do everything else. We are taught to be superwoman. If you are in pain, don't worry about it. Chunk it up, keep it going. Don't show your emotions, make it work. All these different things. And I had to tell a woman, wow, isn't that so deep that we do all these things for other people, yet even Superman himself had weaknesses. Even Superman himself was weak at certain points. And why? Because of kryptonite.
And had to take
so how dare we think that we are a superwoman that does not have any weakness, when we have superheroes, and every superhero we can look at in the Marvel world and world in general, they have weaknesses. And we take care of everybody else. And we make sure everybody else has what they're needing and what they're supposed to have, yet we sacrifice ourselves in the process. So what you're telling me is that your husband's important. Your kids are important. Your job and your employment is important, but you are not. I can value everything else because they take a priority, but I don't value myself.
That's really
How
good.
fair is that to me? That I can care about everybody else but me. And if I am the person who is supposed to keep everything together, I need to put myself at the number one person on the list. Because if I'm the only person that can have the ability to take care of the husband, the kids, the job, and everything else, then don't I need to be up to par? Shouldn't I make sure that I have everything that I need, so that way when I am pouring back into everybody else, I can actually do it from a filled up cup?
Correct.
Versus my cup is halfway empty. Because I'm so busy constantly pouring out to other people, and I never take that time to pour out to myself. So I had to tell a client, you are invalidating yourself. You don't care about you. You're telling me everybody else matters but me. Every time you talk, every time you tell me you sacrifice your emotions and you keep it moving and you act like you didn't care about all these different things, what you told me is I don't value myself. Everybody else is more important than me. That's settling too.
It is. But you said something that was so good while you were talking about Superman, and I just thought about all the superheroes, right? They rested from wearing their cape, right? Because Superman himself changed into Clark Kent. So that means I gave Superman a rest. Wonder Woman changed back into Diana and not Wonder Woman anymore. She took a rest being just Diana at that moment, right? And living her life, and nobody knew who she was. That she was Wonder Woman. I think we just don't know how to step out of character, right? We were never taught
to take that mask off.
Correct. We still wear the mask. I remember years ago getting a prophetic word in church that the person saw me wearing a mask and I looked like a clown, because I never let my guard down. I was always trying to live up to a memory or a thought. What was my memory or thought? I'm going to be better than my mother. I'm not going to be an alcoholic. I'm not going to allow myself to be abused. I'm always going to be there for my kids. Nobody's going to take my children away. So I had this mask on, trying to be, superwoman. And I remember that song back in the day, I'm not your superwoman. That's so important to understand, that I'm not the one who has to carry this on my back. I don't have to be loyal to a thought nor a memory of something I think it should be. I have to be truthful to myself.
Correct.
And understand that this is wrong, because the only way to get the healing I need and to really learn relationship is if I can deal with what's keeping me or preventing me from having a true relationship.
That's correct, because your first obligation, as I say, we stay sometimes out of obligation. Your first obligation needs to be to yourself.
Right.
If you are not putting yourself first, you are not going to be of any service to anybody else because you're not going to be where you need to be mentally, physically, emotionally,
Correct.
spiritually. You're not going to be in that standpoint to be able to take care of other people. And I know there's so many women that settle. I see it in my personal life. I see it in my professional life, where women settle because of them feeling like this is all I'm going to get.
Right.
And even if there is a possibility that you won't find another guy,
right,
is it really better to stay in that because of that concern and I'm not going to find anybody else?
Right.
Versus saying, you know what, let me focus on me because this settling right here, this ain't giving me what I need anyway. And it's still causing me stress and it's still causing me agony.
Right.
And get myself together so that way the right person that comes along, I'm going to be able to clock them because I ain't going to accept anything less.
Correct.
And so I think as women, we settle for so many different reasons, but we don't realize that in our mind it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense if you really dissect it because there's so many other things that's going on. And I also encourage women, if you are settling, to really take that look inside yourself of why. It comes from somewhere. It comes from somewhere. Whether your experiences, whether your upbringing, whether your thought process, it comes from somewhere. And we have to be very careful to start to dissect where is it coming from, because that's the part that needs to be healed. So that way, if we are supposed to be with that person, then that means we can also know what the work needs to be done to actually be with that person. And that's not just on me. Right. Because in any relationship, it takes two people to make it work. So it can't just be me working on it. If that other person is not going to work on it and you know it's a hindrance to your relationship, then you continue to stay in it. You're settling. Point blank, clear. There's no way to walk around it. And so I think that's the issue with relationships. And we can go deeper, but I know we talked about doing the next part of this, which is the friendship aspect of it. Yeah. And you mentioned friendship, and that's so funny to me because I can honestly say I have settled in friendships. Mm-hmm. I have not settled in relationships like that, but I've definitely settled in friendships for that reason that you said earlier. For me, it's been because I don't, when you think about, you don't want to lose friends. Like, we grew up together, or all these different reasons. It's like, I don't want to lose no more friends. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be able to go into my adult years with friends. Right. So I settle. I settle when you make snarky comments. I settle when you don't show up for me, but I show up for you. I settle when I invite you to things and you don't come. I settle for when, you do things or say things that may be hurtful. I settle because of the concern of, I don't want to lose this friend. Correct. But it's the same thing if we look at it from the aspect of an intimate relationship. It still hurts you in some way. Right. So in our logical mind, our rational mind, we try to rational out that settling makes sense. But regardless of the reasoning, it still comes back to there's certain things that are going to inhibit you or impact you because of that settling. Correct. And I think when it comes to friendships, we have to be very careful of understanding the difference of when are you no longer the person that's supposed to be in this next season of life with me.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we have to learn that. We have to realize that everybody's not meant to stay. In the last 2 years, especially since the pandemic, I've really tried to delve into understanding the Word of God for myself. And, I think about Paul and Peter, Barnabas, all the different disciples. They each had to go their own way. That does not mean that they didn't still have that one common denominator, Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. They all had that common denominator, but they realized that as much as we are brothers or friends or whatever it may be, we have to go the path that God has set us on to do what we have to do. And I cannot allow your gift to hinder my gift. Mm-hmm. Right? And so when we learn that just because me and you are not ace cool booms or whatever mm-hmm. you want to say, go back like two wheels on a Cadillac or whatever it is, that does not mean that I have any hate for you. No, I got nothing but love for you, and I want you to go and grow. Spread your wings. Become that butterfly. Stop being a caterpillar, because my gift may be hindering what God wants you to do, mm-hmm. right? And the same in reverse. So I have to realize that I love you, but we've grown apart, and there's nothing wrong with that, because mm-hmm. you have to go do what God has called you to do, and I have to go do what God has called me to do. And you cannot allow people making you feel like a bad friend, making you loyal, to make you stay. I'm learning. A lot of people could point the finger at you and say, well, it's your fault. And I can literally point back and say, well, remember when you did? But rather than do that, let me go grow. And you go your way and you grow. And you learn for you about you. And then maybe when we come back together, it will be a stronger relationship. Or we keep going the path we're going, and I'm still going to be waving at you, rooting you on, but from over here rather than right in the same vicinity as you. There's nothing wrong
I
with
think
that.
I've learned that loving from a distance is not a bad thing.
It's not.
Even with family. Because I think that's another layer.
Too. That's a whole nother layer. Let's not even go on that one yet.
Even
right?
with that aspect of, I can love you, but it doesn't mean that we have to be together. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in my vicinity. It doesn't mean that we have to be best friends. I can love you from a distance because not everybody is supposed to be in your inner circle anyway.
Correct.
And I think a lot of us, when it comes to friendships, we have this misconstrued understanding of what that really entails. And a friendship it should be a two-way street.
Yep.
It should never be one-sided. So if I'm doing all the work, and the moment I stop doing the work, it falls apart, then that means it's not really a friendship, because that means I'm the only one that's carrying it. And I don't think that, it has to come down to saying, you tell me all that you've done for me, and I tell you all that I've done for you. That's also not a friendship either, because if you got to hold on to what I've done and what you've done, then that's a whole nother layer of concern. But I do think it's an understanding that you have to have of, if you feel like you're doing all the work, if you feel like that you're not getting something back in return, that's something to look at. I actually had a client recently tell me, she feels lonely because she feels like she doesn't have any friends, and she feels like she has to go out her way for her friendships that she does have, where if she doesn't drive to that person's house to go hang out with them, it doesn't happen.
Right.
Like, it's not that you're going to meet me halfway. It's not any of that. It's me showing up to you. And I feel like, if I stop, then that friendship is not there.
Right.
And we talked about that a little bit more. And it's interesting because as I say that, I think it's definitely been times for myself where I feel like I carried the friendship.
Yeah.
Where I was, if we fell out, I'm calling.
Yeah.
We fell out, I'm texting. Somebody else fell out, I'm getting y'all on the phone to talk to each other. Yep. Oh, I'm getting everybody text messages, hey, let's go hang out, or let's go somewhere. In the moment where my life changed because of whatever reason, I got busy, or, I didn't want to spend time with my family. It was smart comments like you always with your family, or smart comments like, oh, she doesn't show up. Well, how can I? I'm working full time. Right. I'm going to school full time. I barely see my family. So, the moment I get a chance to see them, I want to see them. It's not because of anything more, but I like spending time with them. And it was funny because the moment I stopped doing that, meaning getting everybody together, the moment I stopped going out my way to text first and to call first and to get everybody back together and to get us all to hang out, the moment I stopped, I watched so many friendships I had fall apart. Yep. Friendships I never thought I would lose because they were there. Right. And the moment I stopped giving a care as far as saying I'm going to go out of my way, I said, wow, well, was I the one all along carrying this relationship? Was it even genuine? Right. Was this even a real relationship? Because now I see I was doing the work, because you didn't call me. You didn't text me. You didn't go out your way to, even if it was my reason of us falling apart, right. You didn't go out your way to call me and say, hey, what's going on? Like I would do. Even if it was your fault, I'm calling saying, hey, what happened? You mad? Da, 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 da. You didn't even give me the benefit of the doubt to do that for me. Right. So are we really friends? Yeah. And I think we settle in friendships too because we feel like that's what we're supposed to do. So I told myself a long time ago, I'm not doing that. I'm going to stop going out my way. I'm going to stop killing myself to make it work. And I'm going to back off. Yeah. And let's see, the relationship that's supposed to be in my life, they're going to stay in because they're supposed to if it's real. Right. You know what I'm saying? And so I think when it comes to settling, we have to be very careful of understanding our own motive of why we're staying in that relationship, regardless of what relationship it is. Whether it's a friendship, whether it's an intimate one, whether it's with family, we got to ask ourselves, why am I settling? It's funny that you talk about that because I think about when I pulled back from a lot of things because of the same recognition. I remember people using the word against me and saying, well, that's not God, that you should act that way. And I remember telling somebody one day, I'm not God. I'm Tanya. I'm still obtaining towards the mark. I'm still trying to get there. And the one thing God did talk to me about with friendliness is make yourself friendly, which means I am open to friendship. I'm never cut off from friendship. However, I am wise about friendship. But the Bible also tells us to be discerning. Okay? So I'm learning that I don't have to put myself in everything to prove that I'm your friend. And if I have to, then I have to check why am I doing that, or why is that happening that way. So I think we have to check our own motives like we check motives of other people. Correct. But we have to allow ourselves to be who we are without having people give us a guilt trip. Because for a long time, that was the guilt trip. You know, oh, you're doing this and that. That's not God. But also understanding that regardless of any of that, people gonna always try to use something against you. You know what I'm saying? You have. That's why if you check your own motive, right? And I always tell my clients, you know, even when I do couples therapy, and we talk about, you know, when do you feel like it's actually over, and we talk about, have you done your part? In any type of relationship, it's about you doing your part. Correct. You being able to say, I have honestly done everything that I can do to make it work. Correct. And if you can say that in any relationship it is, if you can say, I've done everything I can humanly do, spiritually do to make this relationship work, and it's not working, then that means if you got to walk away, you're walking away. Because now you've done everything you can do. You've prayed. You've seeked God. You've made it work with them. You've improved your communication. You told them what the areas were. You've given them time to change it. You've done all these things and you're saying it's still not there. Then that means you have to decide. What more are you waiting to see? Right. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's where you understanding what your motive is, regardless of what that person going to come with you at and say about you, you're going to be so good with it because it's like, hey, I know for a fact I've done all that I can do to make this relationship work. And I feel like when we are falling victim of the guilt trip, then you got to ask yourself, did you really do all that you could? Correct. Did you do your part? Did you do your part? Because the most important thing is, did I do my part? Did I do all that I can humanly do to make this relationship work and to stand on good terms to get us to the next step? And so I'm going to encourage y'all as we talk about and we close out settling. And we'll probably bring this topic back because there's so much more we can go into it. But I'm going to encourage you to take time to really, you know, take some awareness in your own life and say, are you settling in any area of your life? We're talking about relationships and friendships, but you could also be settling with your job. You can also be settling with your business. There's so many other areas you can be settling in. So take a time to sit down with yourself and say, am I settling? What areas of my life am I settling in? And then take a moment to also say why. Really seek out your motives of why you're settling. Then seek out, are these things that you're settling for, are they changeable? Are they something that's fixable? Are they something that can be adjusted? And if they can, then start making those improvements to change it, because settling isn't healthy, right? But if it's not something that can be changed, then ask yourself, why are you still staying? Right. Are you doing everything that you can do to make it work? And if you can't, if you are doing everything that you're able to do and it's still not working, that means you need to take some accountability to say, what do you do now? But if you aren't, then that means you need to take accountability and say, how can I improve it? Right. So I'm going to encourage y'all to do that as we talk about settling, and hopefully, you know, you get some insight. But if you have any other topics that you want to share with us, or anything you want to ask us particularly about this topic or other topics, you know, definitely reach out to us or leave a comment on under the video or whatever else. And we look forward to talking with y'all next time. Y'all have a good day. Have a nice day.
So we want to thank you for listening in today, and want to encourage you to go and like our Facebook page and Instagram page, Sauce and Season, if you haven't already. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, comment, share, and turn on your notifications to know when we have released another video or have gone live. We hope that you were blessed in some way with today's podcast, and hope that you join us again for our next podcast. Thank you, and have a blessed day.